It rained absolutely continuously. One was as afraid of getting drowned as one was of getting hit by shells.
There was no chance of getting wounded and getting a blighty one at Passchendaele. You'd either get through or die. Because if you're wounded and you slip off the duckboards, you just sank into the mud.
The mud was so deep that with drag ropes on the wheels and something like 100 men on the drag ropes, it was impossible to pull the guns out of the mud. You see fellows coming down there from the trenches badly wounded, covered from head to foot in blood, perhaps an arm missing. You see some of the fellows drop off the duckboard and literally die from exhaustion, from loss of blood. Horrible it was.
Bent double, like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and towards our distant rest began to trudge. Men marched asleep. Many had lost their boots, but limped on, blood-shod. All went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of gas shells dropping softly behind. Gas, gas, quick boys. An ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time, but someone still was yelling out and stumbling and floundering like a man in fire or lime. Dim through the misty panes and thick green light, as under a green sea, I saw him drowning.
The barrage roars and lifts, then clumsily bowed with bombs and guns and shovels and battle gear. Men jostle and climb to meet the bristling fire. Lines of grey, muttering faces, masked with fear, they leave their trenches, going over the top while time ticks blank and busy on their wrists. And hope, with furtive eyes and grappling fists, flounders in mud. Oh, Jesu, make it stop.
The weather cleared. The ground began to dry.
Our artillery barrage was magnificent, quite the best that the Australians had ever seen. Creeping forward exactly according to plan, the barrage won the ground while the infantry followed behind and occupied all the important points with a minimum of resistance.
This seemed to be a turning point at last. The German Army Group commander wrote,
"It is to be hoped that another attack will not follow too quickly, as we have not sufficient reserves behind the front."
An officer on Haig's staff was writing,
"It is a race with time and a fight with the weather.
Would the weather hold?" Plumer's next attack was scheduled for October the 4th. The barometer began to fall on October the 1st. 0 hour on the 4th was 6 a.m. The objective, the line of German concrete pillbox defenses on the Messines Ridge.
As we advanced, we saw Germans out of their trenches, caught in our creeping barrage. They had been attacking at the same moment as us. We pressed on and reached our objective. We were on sloping ground, and ahead lay the crest of a ridge.
It was really surprising to look across and see before you the green fields of Belgium, actual trees. Grass, of course, churned up a good deal, fields churned up with barrage shells, but it was, as far as we were concerned, open country. But then to look back from where we came, back to Ypres, there was devastation. And it was just dawn time, and you could then see why the gunners had had such a gruesome, our own gunners had had such a gruesome time. You could see the flashes of all the guns right from Messines right back to the very gates of Messines Gate.
The Australians were standing on the very edge of the salient. General Monash, commanding their 3rd Division, wrote,
Great happenings are possible in the very near future, as the enemy is terribly disorganized. Our success was complete and unqualified. We got absolutely astride of the main ridge.
The Germans called October the 4th a black day. Ludendorff wrote,
The infantry battle commenced on the morning of the 4th. It was extraordinarily severe. And again, we only came through with enormous losses.
Now the great question presented itself in simple terms.
In view of 3 step-by-step blows, all successful, what will be the result of 3 more in the next fortnight?
The question was never answered. Prince Ruprecht of Bavaria, commanding the Germans in Flanders, wrote,
Sudden change of weather, most gratifying. Rain, our most effective ally.
Haig's staff officer noted,
It was the saddest day of this year. We did fairly well, but only fairly well. It wasn't the enemy, but mud that prevented us doing better. But there is now no chance of complete success this year. We must still fight on for a few more weeks, but there is no purpose in it now, so far as Flanders is concerned.
Now the ridges were needed to lift the army, if only a little, out of the sea of mud. This was the Slough of Despond. In this wasteland, shell craters touched each other, lip to lip, filled with disgusting ooze. Forward, inch by inch, along the slimy tracks between these stinking ponds, British, Australian, and New Zealand soldiers crept towards Passchendaele.
I don't know how far the duckboards extended because it was such slow going up to the front. Must have been hundreds and hundreds of yards and they zigzagged about. But each side was a sea of mud. You stumbled and slid along. If you slipped, you went up to the waist, possibly. Not only that, but deep in every pool was fall in with decomposed bodies of humans and mules, or mules and perhaps both. And if you were wounded and slipped off, well, then that was the end of you.
I died in hell. They called it Passchendaele. My wound was slight, and I was hobbling back, and then a shell burst slick upon the duckboards, so I fell into the bottomless mud and lost the light.
How many men, wounded, overburdened, or overtired, vanished in the swamp, no one will know. The October days were nightmares for the British Army. The icy fingers of nightmare clutched men's hearts on both sides of the line.
The only thought in it was that the Germans were in as bad a position as we were. In fact, we had a case where one little party of men was trying to make their hole more comfortable, scooping it out, and some hundreds of yards away the Germans were doing the same, but both in their miseries and taking any damn notice of each other.
A German officer wrote,
I am scared. For the first time in this war, I have doubts whether we shall be able to hold out against the odds. Altogether, there must be 8,000 to 10,000 guns employed on this little bit of front. That is the picture which scares me. Verdun, the Somme, and Arras are mere purgatories compared with this concentrated hell, which one of these days will be stoked up to white heat. It makes you grind your teeth with rage and gives you a dry feeling in your throat. I have a sense of